Welcome. Welcome, Rotarians and guests, to the Rotary Club of Seattle, the fourth oldest and one of the world's largest Rotary clubs, where we embrace service above self and are connecting for good. Today, it's all about getting from point A to point B. Whether it's public transit and the significant investment we're being asked to consider on our ballot this year, or whether we're moving from new member status to regular member status, or if we're looking at how our dollars translate from our donations to our service foundation into good works in our community. We will travel that path today. And to provide our travel music, we've got Virginia McKenzie as our song leader and Burr Stewart on the piano. But first, an inspiration from our soon-to-be introduced new member, Jaime Mendez. Welcome to the podium, Jaime.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. Ooh, wow, all right. This is a wonderful group of people, and I appreciate the opportunity to lead with some inspiration words. And I want to say, first and foremost, that it's not every day that the audience motivates the speaker. And I'm very grateful for that. And what I'm here to speak about is a gentleman named Jimmy Valvano. And he spoke some credible words and thoughts at his time. He was part of an '83 miraculous season where they beat legends. And in his deathbed, he created part of the process of the Jimmy V Foundation, which has raised over $100 million in cancer research. So when he was 16 years old, he was part of a youthful basketball group. The Reverend Bob Richards, pole vault champion, he was part of the Wheaties cover. And he explained to him some really beautiful words that profoundly affected him to the moment he passed away, and myself right now that I'm sharing with you. And it's, the Lord must have loved ordinary people because he made so many of us. Now you're sitting here thinking to yourself, whoa, ordinary, I'm special, I'm unique, right? We all have these great attributes to ourselves. But the statement that followed after that is what really got him. And he said, the Lord must have loved ordinary people because he made so many of us. And every single day, ordinary people accomplish extraordinary things. Every single day, ordinary people do extraordinary things. And that's why I come here to Rotary every week, because I see people doing extraordinary things. Thank you.
Well, I want to move on to our main program. And teeing this up is Hamilton McCulloh. Hamilton, will you come up here? I just need to embarrass you a little bit.
Go for it.
Okay. Hamilton is a creative guy with numerous broadcast production and marketing campaigns to his credit. He's been working PR for about 16 years here in Seattle, 9 of them with Green Rubino, where he serves as their executive director. Hamilton is a past VP of programs for our club. He's a National Emmy Award winner. He takes photos at our meetings, and we see them in the totem and on our social media pages. And he was integral in orchestrating our program today. So Hamilton, I want to thank you for almost 10 years of service to our club, and in particular for your help with today's program. Thank you, Hamilton.
Thank you, Kathy. I know Skip liked standing on the box, but I don't think I need to. So if everybody could just look at me for a second. All right. We'll see that on Facebook later on. Thank you very much. Yeah. I'll get one with you later, Don. Okay, so the main program today, there's obviously an election coming in 20 days. And there's a lot of local ballot measures that are facing us that require some attention. And certainly there's one, Proposition 1, Sound Transit's expansion, that's getting a lot of attention, and with good reason. We're lucky today to have Greg Hanscom, who's the editor-in-chief with Crosscut, here today to lead a conversation about the pros and cons of Proposition 1. Greg is an award-winning journalist and an authority on urban sustainability. And he'll be joined in this conversation by 2 local well-known businessmen, Craig Kinzer and Kevin Wallace, and we're very grateful that they're here today to share their ideas. Crosscut believes that an informed public is essential to finding solutions to our civic and political challenges, and I think we can all agree there's no question that transportation poses a pretty significant challenge to our region. Can we afford the $54 billion price tag? Can we afford not to invest in mass transit? Please give a warm Rotary welcome to Greg Hanscom, Craig Kinzer, and Kevin Wallace.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it. I'll introduce these guys, and we plan to spend 15 or 20 minutes sort of talking amongst ourselves, as if we were sitting in a living room on a couch, keeping in mind that there are 250 or so people also in the living room listening in. I've just asked these guys not to get too lost in the weeds of compound interest rates, et cetera, et cetera. With any luck, we will send you home with some good food for thought as you pull your ballot out of the envelope here in the coming days and fill that out. So as Hamilton said, I'm Greg Hanscom. I am the editor-in-chief at crosscut.com. We are a nonprofit local news website, and we really specialize in politics and public policy. So we've spent a fair amount of time and a fair number of words exploring Sound Transit 3 over the past couple of weeks, and I'm really happy to be here with you two. There are a few things that I think everyone can agree on when it comes to Sound Transit 3, the transportation landscape in this region. The first is that we do need to do something, as Hamilton was saying earlier today. Just allowing the traffic to continue to get worse is not an option. We're already having a tough time getting to work and back home again. So something needs to be done. The other thing that I think everyone can probably agree on is that $50 billion is a lot of money.
54.
54 if you're paying close attention. So the question
4 billion is a lot of money too.
Yes. So this is not an easy one, okay? And in my work with various writers and editors looking at Sound Transit 3, which will be on the ballot as Proposition 1, if there's one thing that I've taken away, it's that this is a tough one. It's a lot of money. We're looking at $54 billion spent over the course of 25 years. And it requires a certain leap of faith one way or another, whether you're for this or whether you're against it. So I'm hoping that you guys can help shed some light on the issue and maybe send these folks home with some thoughts that they can keep in mind as they look at their ballots. So with me again, we've got Craig Kinzer, and I am going to just cheat on this because I don't want to get this wrong. So Craig is the founder of the real estate firm Kinzer Partners. And Craig has been an outspoken member of the business community in support of Sound Transit 3. Proposition 1. And the other side of the ring, the other corner, we have Kevin Wallace, and Kevin is the, let me get this right, President and Chief Operating Officer of Wallace Properties. Kevin's also a member of the Bellevue City Council and a spokesman for the No on ST3 campaign, also known as the Better Alternatives campaign.
That's good enough for today.
Okay, that's going to work. That's great. So just to kick this off, question for the both of you, and that is 40 years from now, how will you be getting to work? Craig, you want to start that?
You know, short of a Star Trek just transformation, I'll be just getting into what will be one of these little compact 2 or 4 person driverless cars, and I'll be working all the way in or just kind of ramping up and ramping, just like you're on a ferry, right? That's what it's going to be like. I don't necessarily think that it will be all transit or light rail or buses. It's going to be a large combination. And if I'm so fortunate enough to still be coming downtown in 40 years, that would put me at 100 years old. So I'd be, it better be quick transit, I can tell you.
That's great. Kevin, how about you? Pneumatic tubes, robot cars?
I would hope that at age 85 I wouldn't be coming into work at all at that point. But I think that saying 40 years is even beyond what Sound Transit's talking about with the ST3 plan, which is just an impossibly long period of time. To say a 25-year plan in today's world with the expansion of technology that we're seeing in transportation, to ask people to pay this kind of tax increase for something that it doesn't deliver until 2041, in the case of the Issaquah to Kirkland extension they're proposing, is just not realistic. And there are a lot of options that we have that can be delivered a lot faster, solve the traffic congestion problems of today, and don't require such a large tax increase. So that's really what the No campaign is all about, is there's a better plan. There's a much less expensive plan, and we really can't afford to raise taxes this much for an optional thing that delivers 25 years from now, when we have some huge burdens facing us in Olympia, the county, at the city, that also need to be recognized. So I'm sure we'll get more into that, but that's sort of the synopsis.
Great. So Craig, $54 billion. Can we afford it?
Yeah. So, and I apologize if this sounds a little wonky, but it's not $54 billion. I admire the Sound Transit Board for saying $54 billion. But for those of you who deal with time value of money, if you're paying $54 billion over 25 years, in today's dollars, it's about half that. Still a lot of money, mind you, but if you really had $54 billion today, you build it in the next 5 years and it would all be there. It wouldn't be in 25 years, right? But they had to say that because it's, it's over time. Now, there's no doubt that's a lot of money. But to me, this is really about the future. Are we going to be a city or a region that continues to kind of wring our hands a little bit, as we always do? And we spent 3.5 years studying this. Let's spend another 10 years studying this. Like back in the 60s, oh, we don't want transit, right? Let's not do that. Let's just wait longer and longer. Or are we realizing that we've passed a tipping point? We are no longer that little fishing village in the Northwest that happens to sell airplanes, right? We are an international city that is completely diversified with millions of people coming in. Like it or not, our region is going to grow. And so this is about the future. It's about those boys and girls that you guys are supporting. Those are the ones who are going to enjoy this transit because you're thinking proactively. We're thinking proactively, and we're going to be competitive because we're telling the world we need mass transit, we need light rail. And I think it's critical that we go in that direction.
So Kevin, what would you do with $54 billion?
Well, I guess the quick answer to that question is I would spend it on educating our kids over the next 25 years instead of this plan. What people need to realize is that we are already doing it. Okay, if you're a fan of light rail, and I'm a fan of light rail in high-density areas, that's coming. The voters, you all, at least the majority of you all, said yes to Sound Transit in 1996 to a tax increase, and said yes again in 2008. It was only 8 years ago for another tax increase. And as a result, Sound Transit receives $900 million a year today in tax revenue. And with that money, they're deploying a light rail system that's partially built, and by 2023 will be complete and extend south to Des Moines, north to Linwood, and east to Redmond, through Bellevue, through Seattle, through the highest density areas of the region. And so that's going to be a good solution out through 2023. ST3 is really about what happens after that. Do we do light rail extensions to these lower density areas, or do we use bus rapid transit or express bus and park and rides to the lower density areas, where Sound Transit's own studies show that that's just as effective and costs significantly less. So that's why it's really important. We have other priorities here, particularly the education issue down in Olympia that's going to be discussed and is supposed to be resolved in just a couple months from now with a large $1 billion a year tax burden there. We need to solve that problem now and worry about light rail extensions that don't deliver until 2041 after that's done.
So where Kevin and I agree is education is critical. I would put education as probably one of our absolute top priorities here in the state, in the country. Where Kevin and I disagree is I don't think it's mutually exclusive. I don't think there's only so much. I think we're a region that is willing to invest in itself in both education and mass transit. And I think mass transit and light rail actually acts as a catalyst in many ways to the educational system that we have. So I agree with Kevin, education, absolutely important, but it's not an either or.
So, okay, so question for you, Craig. You know, one of the specters that people raise about this is that we are living in a time of rapid technological advance. Elon Musk predicts that we're going to have the technology to have robot cars, autonomous self-driving cars on the streets in the next couple of years. He already has cars on the streets doing that. Is there a chance that we have missed the window on light rail and bus rapid transit? Is there a chance that we are about to vote in massive tax increases to fund a technology, light rail in particular, that 10 years from now is going to be out of date?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good question, and people have talked about how fast technology changes. But here's the big, I think, takeaway is if you do use technology associated with our current system, you're using the roads that we have. This is a whole nother right-of-way. The technology that's coming in the future certainly could be part of improving our traffic situation on our roads, but we're going to have another right-of-way. And whatever technology there is in 20, 30 years, that also is available for another right-of-way. So when Kevin talks about, well, we'll have buses and we can do these other things, still going to be on the same roads, right? Still going to be in the same traffic. And another point I think that the opposition makes is that light rail won't necessarily improve congestion. And I think there's a chance that they're right, because we're going to have so many more people that you will still have congestion, and people are going to have to sometimes change their habits. And you're seeing a lot of the companies we represent, they're changing their habits as to how they work, whether it's flex time or working from home or various systems. But at the end of the day, you're going to need all of this. And so I don't think that technology is going to somehow mean we're leapfrogged. As a matter of fact, if you went by that argument, with technology going as fast as it is, we would just freeze. Let's not make any decisions, none, because in a year there's going to be new technology, so let's just not do anything. And I think that's a big mistake.
So I think that having the light rail system in the highest density areas provides us a good solution for the near term. Clearly, as we get out into the next generation, the improvements in technology that we're already seeing are going to provide better options for us than just a fixed light rail system. So what I see coming, and all this is still murky, nobody can really tell you exactly what's going to happen because things are changing so fast. But what it appears to be is that in the lower and middle density areas, the technology will give us options that allow people to connect to the spine more easily. So if you have a driverless car that can pick you up from your home in Arlington and drop you off at a park and ride in Linwood, where you can catch the light rail train down to Seattle, that's a good solution in the future, right? And so transit's kind of going in that way too. We're looking at, for downtown Bellevue, these driverless shuttle buses that a couple of companies are creating right now and testing out in other cities, that provide an infinite number of routes and infinite flexibility to carry smaller groups of people around from place to place. And that's going to really reduce traffic congestion when those things can be implemented. Light rail, on the other hand, is a fixed rail system, and it's very expensive, and once it's in, it's in. And so it's not like it's completely useless because of technology, but the extensions that we're creating to Linwood and Des Moines and Redmond, I think, will be a great tool if we can allow people to connect to those. So if I could just give one example of, by 2023, the light rail will extend north to Linwood. There'll be a park and ride at the Linwood Transit Center. And someone from points north can come in 2023 and access that system. What Sound Transit 3 is asking people to do is spend $5.8 billion for a line that doesn't open until 2036, and would allow that same person to access the station at Everett. But in Everett, at that park and ride, they would then have to take the train 33 minutes back down to Linwood before riding it another 28 minutes to downtown Seattle. So personally, given the incredible tax increases that this is proposing, I don't see the benefit in doing that. It would be just as well to invest in more bus service to connect people to Linwood, And we could do that sooner, solve the traffic problems of today, and not spend the $5.8 billion on this extension that just really doesn't have the cost benefit.
So Kevin, I'm going to stick with you for one more question here. There's a common saying in Seattle that Atlanta got our subway system. Back in the 1960s and 70s, Seattle, I believe, twice voted down tax funding to support a rail system, sort of inner city rail system. Are you worried that if we vote this down, we're going to be standing here 20 years from now, 30 years from now, regretting that we once again turned down a mass transit plan like this?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely not. Like I said before, the voters gave Sound Transit 2 tax increases, and one in '96 and one in 2008. They have a lot of money. And actually, if they came back to the voters next year and said, let's just extend the existing tax rates out, let's not let them expire, extend them out to 2041, that would give them about $10 billion in tax revenue beyond what they're planning to spend currently. So, and they can lever that up with bonds and grants and get it to about $16 billion, which for frame of reference is about the same as what the legislature passed for a statewide transportation package 2 years ago. So this is a huge amount of money that they still have to play with without raising our tax rates at all. So I think we really need to take a look at, is there cost benefit for what is an immense tax increase, okay? Sound Transit says that an average individual will pay $14 a month or $169 a year if ST3 passes. But if you add up the 3 taxes and apply it to a middle-class family example, a household, where you have a $90,000 a year income, $45,000 worth of cars, and a $450,000 home, that family will pay Sound Transit $1,007 a year if ST3 passes. So this is a huge tax burden that we're looking to impose, and there's just not the cost benefit from this plan to justify it.
So Craig, one more question for you, and then I'd like to kind of open it to questions for from the audience. Can Seattle be competitive without a built-out, can the Seattle region be competitive without a fully built-out mass transit system? You represent a lot of large employers in this city. What's kind of the perception that you get from those companies?
Yeah, so I don't think it's binary. It's not like you will or will not be competitive, but will we be considerably less competitive? Yes, and in 2 ways. One is just the actual use of this kind of transit and the ability to be equitable, right? A lot of people who ride transit are those who can't afford cars or can't afford parking. So you become a much more equitable region, much more diverse region. And the companies that I represent, they are all supporting, whether it's Alaska Airlines or Starbucks or the Gates Foundation. You go through all the major brands, Children's Hospital, all of our clients are very much supporting Sound Transit 3. Personally, I'm on the board over at Safeco Field, and I was talking to an executive there, and they were so excited by the fact that, 1, college students were now coming to the games because of light rail, and 2, they were able to hire 300 new people associated with the services within the stadium, right? These are all $15 an hour jobs, purely because they could come in on light rail. This is something that's going to make us a much more competitive region. That's 1. 2 is just the perception. When we vote this down, we are telling the country, we're telling the world, hey, sorry, we really don't want to move into the future. We want to stay here, and we kind of like our clogged roads, right? We think that's nice. It's kind of provincial, right? I agree that it's a lot of money. I don't think the numbers that Kevin threw out, I would kind of argue a little bit with that as to how expensive it is. It is a cost, but I think it's something that we have to afford, just like we have to afford education. And as a region, we need to look to invest. And this is not money that's going to go to a state budget to spend, on annual operations. This is an investment, and I think we need to make it.
All right, I want to open this up to questions from the audience. So if you've got a question, put a hand up. Ken's going to bring some microphones around, and we'll get some words from you guys.
We have one here from Bill Champion.
I have become convinced we need some significant increase and improvement in our mass transit. My concern is we don't have a very good record of managing these projects. either at the state level or the local level? What's going to be different to get things done on time and on budget?
So I have to disagree with you. Early on in Sound Transit history, they did have some problems, and those were very well publicized, and they went over budget, and it was, I think, not well led. It is now a well-oiled machine, and the last two lines that were brought on, University District and the line south of the airport, were done, on budget and on time. Now, Kevin will say, you can easily be on budget, you just have to make a huge budget, right? And so I get that argument. But I do think that as they throw in their cost and their contingencies, they have shown that they can deliver. And I think if you look at the proposal on the tax, there is some contingency there. They have an interest rate that is higher than today's interest rate. Now, they use that flat all the way out through the 25 years. And there's a good chance that they're going to have some extra revenue or a surplus. I tend to trust our elected officials. I trust that they're going to do the right thing and they're going to roll back taxes if it turns out that they didn't need as much money. But they're smart and that they've put out enough to complete it on budget, on time, and they've been doing that. So I have to say, I disagree with you. I think we've got a very good group running the show.
Great. We have a question from John
So just to
Adams.
respond to that, I think, there's not much history that would allow us to have that view that, that they'll just roll the taxes back and not spend more money, for one. And the other thing, I just want to give a little anecdote. First of all, Sound Transit maintains 76% contingencies on their construction cost estimates in their budget. That's true for ST2 and for ST3. City of Bellevue uses 10% for its transportation projects. So there's about $10 billion of contingency in the $54 billion. And then they roll through and deliver on these plans and celebrate the fact that they're so far under budget, but that's only because they didn't deploy all their contingency. Okay? And by the way, they're not, all this cost savings that they're achieving on the ST2 projects is not in the ST3 budget. So they're asking to raise your taxes this much to be able to achieve $54 billion according to their estimates, but they're not telling you that there's $10 billion of contingency in that, and they're not applying the cost savings they've already achieved. And then the last little trick they're pulling is they're assuming, like Craig talked about, 5.3% interest on what is now about $16 billion of debt they have left to issue, and they're actually issuing the debt at 2-point-something%. So that interest carry is in the billions of dollars too. So if they were to reduce those to common sense estimates, get out further in the plan where we vote again on it 4 years from now, they could do the same projects, get the cost down, and would not have to have as big a tax increase as they're talking about today. This is the kind of thing that really needs to be worked on at Sound Transit, and I think that it's a great question and a great concern.
We have a question from John Adams.
Hi, thank you for putting on this forum. I'm currently on the fence on this, and it's wonderfully useful. So I have a two-part question. First, I have an electric car, and it has an optional self-driving feature. And
So does Craig.
so there we go. So the thing that I've noticed is whether I have that feature on or not, it's still a car on the road, and I'm wondering why we're even talking about this romantic idea about self-driving, because frankly, having experienced it, I'm seeing it's not getting me off the road. The second thing that I'm wondering about is I've seen in the materials that it's something like 16,000 passengers an hour in light transit, and it's obviously this is being used now pretty successfully, where a lane, I believe I've read, is like 2,000 to 4,000 people move. And the whole objective, I thought, was to get people off the freeways because we're all jammed up. So I'd like to ask each of you, how is it going to look in the traffic jam if we don't fund this and if we do fund it? 5 and 10 years from now, not 25 years,
Right.
but in our lifetime.
Okay.
Thank you.
So first of all, understand, Greg was asking questions about driverless cars, and I answered them. That's not my central point to this ST3 plan. My point is we need to use the right tools in the right places. When you're in high density areas, light rail works. When you're in medium to low density areas like Issaquah, bus rapid transit is a much better solution because there's not the density to support light rail, and you can get it out there faster and spread it out across a wider area. So that's where the ST3 plan can really be improved. The east side dollars, there's 60% of the dollars are going to that one project on the east side. And we could deliver a very functional bus rapid transit system for about 20% of that cost, which means we could have it on the ground much sooner and have much less tax increase in order to cover it. And then the second part of the question?
Getting cars off the road.
Yeah. So, you know, people, we think very Seattle-centric, right? And what you have to remember is that when we're talking about light rail in Seattle, it's already here, right? We're already building it out. We've already raised the taxes to do it. SD3 is not, in the areas outside of Seattle, which represent a huge amount of the capital budget for this plan, okay, let's exclude downtown Seattle and Ballard. I wouldn't have a problem with having a rational conversation about how to get that built. Downtown Seattle to West Seattle, same answer, okay? But when you're talking about Linwood to Everett, or Federal Way to Tacoma 20 years from now, or the worst, Bellevue to Issaquah, okay, and not Issaquah to Seattle, Bellevue to Issaquah, where you would have a 3-train ride from Issaquah to the airport in 2041 after spending $4.25 billion. It fails the cost-benefit test, especially when their own studies are showing that they can do bus rapid transit and generate the same ridership, serve Sammamish and Issaquah Highlands, and do it for 20% of the cost and faster. It just doesn't make sense. So that's why we need a redo on this. We need to get back out and have a sensible plan that's not so politically driven and really focuses on the cost benefit and getting the cost down so the tax increases aren't so high.
So you're right about the driverless cars. I have a driverless car, and you're right. Somehow the cars in front of me are still there. You know, that doesn't change. That's why you need these right-of-ways. Where I think Kevin and I disagree, well, let's start with where we agree. I believe in density, and you're going to see more of it. Density makes a lot of sense. Here in Seattle, you want the lowest cost per person in your infrastructure, right? And so you need density. Where we disagree a little bit is, you know, I love the quote from Wayne Gretzky, right? It's not where the puck is, it's where is the puck going to be, right? And so I look at the future. In these low density areas, I don't want them to be low density. I want them to be high density. Because one way to get cars off the roads is to have people in Everett, right? There's a lot of people working in a high-density area in Everett, high-density area in Tacoma. And then you want to connect them so people can live wherever they want, and you have this regional system that is very powerful without the sprawl, but yet you still have the equity that allows people to take transit. Both Kevin and I work with developers. Kevin and his father, Bob, are very successful developers. And I know that they, along with my clients, they look at where is light rail going. You invest hundreds of millions of dollars when you see light rail. You don't invest on bus routes, I'll tell you, you just don't. But when we see and say, when we show these cities all having this connectivity, you're going to spread the density around, and it's going to change our transportation. And that's what we need. It's the vision to the future. It's where the puck is going to be.
Okay, you guys, we have about one more minute, maybe if we're lucky. So I'm going to throw just one last quick question at these guys. I'm sorry we don't have more time from the audience. In 2 sentences, what do you want these people in this room to be thinking about as they sit down with their ballot to cast their vote in the coming weeks?
Craig's not capable of answering anything in 2 sentences, so I'm going to be interested to see what he says. You know, I mean, basically, the plan is just not a good solution for the region. It costs too much. It takes way too long, and it doesn't achieve the cost-benefit test. We can come out and do a better plan in the future after we've solved the education funding crisis that the legislature is under court order to solve in Olympia in January, which is a $1 billion a year issue too. So, you know, let's vote no on this and work collaboratively in the future to get a plan that's right for the whole region and doesn't require such large tax increases and preserves money for other more important priorities like education.
Think of your business and think of your kids.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. And again, thanks everybody for having us.
But I also want to talk about what do we do next. And I don't know about you, but I hear in the news a term that seems to be popping up all the time. implicit bias. We heard it from the police chief just last week when she addressed us. So we're going to tackle that issue. What does implicit bias mean, and how does it impact us and our perspectives? We've got some initiatives underway, and I'm going to be announcing them, but I wanted to give you the heads up. There'll be an opportunity for each of us to actually assess our own bias, and we're going to be working with the Seattle Police Department to have access to their test for bias. There's also a test that Professor Dorothy Bullitt uses at the University of Washington, but we're going to get under the hood on this particular issue in the months ahead, and I invite you to participate in that. I think it will be insightful as we continue our club conversation about discrimination in our community, and I am eager to get on with that. But I'm going to call us to the end of our meeting today. Thank you. Welcome again to our visitors, and we'll see you next week at the Renaissance Hotel. We're adjourned.